Today we're going to be talking about the distributive property and combining like terms. The distributive property is something that you will use in math for a very, very, very long time. And the word distribute means to give out. So that's what you're doing here. You're giving the A to everything inside of the parentheses. And since there's nothing between the A and the parentheses, that tells us to multiply. So you're going to do A times B plus A times C. And the most common way to write that is to put your variables side by side. So AB plus AC. Now you wouldn't normally use it when you only have constants or numbers, but because the shorter way to solve this, if I were solving it, would be to do the follow the order of operations, but the directions say to apply the distributive property to write an equivalent expression. So that means I'm writing another math problem. So you're going to do 2 times 9, which is 18, plus 2 times 5, which is 10. And you're going to stop either here or here to have an expression. If you tell me 28, that doesn't show the distributive property at all. So either of these is fine. All right, for the next one, we're going to do 4 times 5, and then 4 times a negative 9 would be a negative 30. Oops, sorry, I jumped ahead. I was doing mental math, and I'm going to talk about that in a second too. 4 times 9. 4 times 5 is 20, and 4 times 9 is 36. You can stop here or you can stop there. It doesn't matter. All right, to talk about that mental math, you don't have to write this step, and I would recommend not writing it. Just do it mentally and write 4 times 5 is 20, and 4 times a negative 9 is a negative 36. Okay? Again, you could have this or this as your answer. It doesn't matter because it's still an expression. You can't tell me the answer is negative 16 because that would not show the distributive property. All right, when you see the directions simplify, simplify means to make as few terms as possible. All right, here we go. If you look inside, you still follow the order of operations, but if you look in the parentheses, you can't combine an x and a 2. That's why the distributive property is so important. So we're going to multiply the 2 times x, and 2 times x is just 2x, and 2 times a positive 2 is a positive 4. And that's your answer. Now, look at the next one. Can we combine x squares and 3s or a negative 3? No, you can't. So you're going to distribute the 3 times the 2x squared. Now, the nice way to do this is just to multiply the constant of 3 times the coefficient of 2. And 3 times 2 is 6. You keep the x squared. And then 3 times negative 3 is a negative 9. You can't combine x squares and 9, so you know you're finished. Alrighty, here is a tricky one. There's a negative sign in front of the parentheses. So that is basically telling you that there is an imaginary 1 right there, and you're distributing that negative to everything on the inside of your parentheses because you can't add r's and 4's. So when you do a negative 1 times r, that gives you a negative 1r. But remember, we don't traditionally write the 1 in our answer because if you have the letter, then you know you have one of them. A negative 1 times 4 is a negative 4. We're not distributing anymore because the parentheses are done, so all of this you just bring straight down. Plus 6 minus 3r. So now we're going to look for like terms, because while we have simplified it, we may be able to get it to fewer terms. Alright, let's look. We have an R, a negative R, not R, not R. These are R's. And since this is in our final answer, then we need to remember that imaginary 1. And these are the same sign. So same sign, the rule is to add and keep the sign. That would be a negative 4R. And now we're going to look for some other like terms. We have a negative 4, and I'm using a different symbol because it doesn't look like the R's. And we have a positive 6. They're both constants, so they can be combined. When you combine a negative 4 and a positive 6, they're different signs, so you subtract and take the sign of the higher absolute value, you get a positive 2. Okay, keep looking. Do you have any like terms? Nope. So that means you are finished. And this is your final answer. Okay? Alright, I didn't box these answers. It's always a good idea to box or highlight your answers, because there's lots of things going on with these problems. There's a lot of work. So you need to show your final answer. Alright, I want you to pause the video and try the next one. Let's see how you do. Welcome back. Hopefully you got negative 9x squared plus 72. The tricky part to this one is making sure you multiply negative 8 times a negative 9 and get a positive 72. And the other tricky thing is that imaginary 1. Hopefully you didn't mess up on that and we can move on. If not, pause the video, go back and see what you need to work on. Okay? Now, here we go. If we look in our parentheses, we can't combine x's and y's, so you leave that alone. And we're not going to combine until we multiply. You have to follow the order of operations. So you're going to multiply here, use your distributive property, so put yourself a note, distribute. So you're going to multiply 2 times 4 and get 8y. And 2 times a negative x is a negative 2x. We haven't done anything with this, so we're going to bring it down. 4x, oh, that's probably not enough room. 4x plus 3xy. Now there's no sign here. That means that was positive, so you have to put a plus. Now let's look for our like terms. We have 4x's. These are not plain x's, so you can't combine it with that one. These are not x's. We have x's right here. So we have 4x minus 2x, which would give us a positive 2x. Look at your next term. It's xy's. Are these xy's? Nope, they're not, so you bring it down. And your last term, I like how when you mark on your expression the like terms, because until you have marked everything, you know you're not finished. Alright, so we are not finished until we take care of that 8y. So we're going to mark it with a different symbol. Some people use a triangle or something. Just make sure it's different from the square and the rectangle and the circle. So plus 8y. And instead of putting a cloud around your answers or a box, since we're using those symbols, you may want to highlight your final answer. Okay? Look at the next one. Oh dear, that's a lot of terms. But we're not going to panic. We're going to not worry about anything. We're going to start on the left and work over to the right. And if you want, it might be better if you just cover up what you're not working on at the time. So you could just take a Post-it note or something and hide that part, because we're not going to deal with it yet. Look in your parentheses. Is there anything to do? We can't add c's and g's, so that would tell us that we need to multiply. You would look over here and see if you could combine any like terms inside of your parentheses at first, but you can't, so that's why I'm not even going to worry about that side yet. That tells us to distribute 20 times c, which would be 20c. And 20 times a positive 7G's, 20 times 7 is 140. And we keep our G. Now we're going to look at the other side and then cover up everything we've done. We have 2 times C, which is 2C. I want to make sure it's the same height. Plus 2 times 3G, which is 6G. And 2 times a negative 5 is a negative 10. Now when we move this, there's nothing between it, so it was positive, put a plus. That's a lot of terms. So we're going to only look for our like terms, start on the left, and move to the right. So we have some C's. Those aren't C's, these are C's. So keep going. Do we have any more C's? No. 20C plus 2C is 22C. Next term is a positive 140G. These are G's, so I'm going to put a rectangle around that one. Those are not G's. So 140 plus 6 is a positive 146G. And the last term in our problem is a negative 10. So once you put a mark around it, you know you've worked with each term of your expression. And you're finished. It's always a good idea to double check at the end to make sure you can't combine anymore in case you made a careless mistake. We have C's, G's, and a constant. So you're finished. Box or highlight your final answer, and you're good to go. Alright, I want you to do 9 and 10. Pause the video and come back when you're finished. Alright, well, welcome back. Hopefully you got negative 28F plus 16 and 13A plus 29. There was one tricky spot distributing that negative. Make sure you pause the video and look at what I did if you did not get the answer. Alright, one more. I like to show how we can apply algebra concepts to geometry. So this tells us to write and simplify an expression to determine the area of the polygon. So if you look, our polygon is a rectangle, and the formula for area of a rectangle is length times the width. So here's what we need to do. This is your length, this is your width. So we're going to write 9, which is your length, times the width. Now don't use X for your multiplication symbol. That will mess you up. And we're going to multiply it by all of this because that's the width of the entire side. So you can't just write X squared plus 6 because then you'd only be multiplying the 9 times the X squared and not times the entire side. So you've got to include parentheses on that. And then, holy cow, there is the distributive property. We can't combine X squares and 6's. So we're going to do 9 times X squared, which is 9X squared, plus, oops, I probably shouldn't put the plus right away, because if this was a minus, it would be different. 9 times 6 is 54. Now, can we get these two terms simplified to 1? Nope, you can't. So that will be your final answer. I hope I've made the distributive property clear to you, and if you need help, go back and rewatch the video.